How about this? Reuters concluded a study last year that came up with this. For the first time since we've been tracking criminal records and crime in the United States, Medicare fraud superseded drugs and prostitution combined. So, when you hear the Attorney General saying, we're cracking down on this, and they have, and they're making inroads, and they are, but they're still not getting, we still need to do far more. Shouldn't that be what we're focused on? Shouldn't the fraud and the inefficiencies and then the pulling together and then taking the seeds of a Heritage Foundation idea piloted by a Republican governor with a Democratic legislature, and then taking the very best of public health, the private sector, and all that science and technology can bring to bear on this issue and make the system work. That's what I favor doing. So we have several other issues that are before Congress, and I know you might have questions that you have, and I'm happy to stay and answer. 36, she's a beauty shop stylist, and he's a restaurant cook. Between the two of them, they have 2 children, and their income is $51,000, right? This is typical middle-class people. So, their monthly premium for a basic insurance plan in the exchange, monthly premium, would be $7,021. Excuse me, $721. Saw a couple of people going, it's the big one, honey, I'm coming to join you. Wow. I felt like Fred Sanford there. Of that, because of the way, based on their income and children and how the program will be designed, the government would pay $428, they would pay $293. See, what people haven't talked about in this is that based on your income and based on your need and your situation in life, yes, you're going to pay and you're going to contribute, but this alleviates all the other costs that have existed. The $1,000 per family, even when you had health care that was paid for by you and your family, but you were paying an extra $1,000. Now the costs are going to be made true, and people will contribute. Now, the other example I like in here, and there's several, but and so it's important as you sign up and enroll to say, well, what am I entitled to? How would this work for me? And they have the calculators; they'll be able to do it. So let me go to, I like the one with the young guy who thinks that he's invincible because most people, oh yeah, CJ, he's single and 27 years old. And we say 27 because the law says that if you're 26 years old, you can stay on your parents' policy. So CJ is a construction worker, and he's a young trainee, and he's making $23,000 a year. And his monthly premium would be $307 a month. The government would pay $186 of that. He pays $121. Now, he could choose, as anyone could choose, not to participate. He would then have to pay a fine. A lot of people object to that. So he's got to make a decision. Should I pay a $90 fine or should I pay $121 and be covered? I know about you, but I think that's a pretty easy decision to make. You know, at least if I'm advising my 27-year-old, I think that's, no matter how invincible he might feel. And so the story goes that CJ ends up, he breaks an ankle playing softball at night in the softball league. And lo and behold, what does that cost? And if he didn't have insurance, who would pay for that? So, much like we require people to have, well, automobile insurance, right? for not only their protection, but the protection of others. That's the concept. Again, an idea developed by the Heritage Foundation and successfully piloted by a Republican governor with a Democratic state. So I think that access debunks a lot of what the issues are that are out there. Now, there are still problems with the Affordable Care Act that need to be addressed as it relates to large groups, as it relates to self-funding groups, a number of issues, none of which cannot be overcome, none of which should throw the nation, hurl the nation into a governmental shutdown, clearly, all of which can be resolved. And for God's sake, if we can do it and lower the national debt and expand Medicare at the same time and take advantage of what we have as a nation, why wouldn't we do that? So that's where we are. Again, I want to thank Brendan for doing this, and I believe that it's important to get out and talk to your constituents and explain these things, because they're complicated, and you only get bits and pieces and sound bites that are targeted at infuriating you, as opposed to providing a solution. I want everybody to commit to me to do this, because this program is not without flaws, and you may have some of you may run into a problem. Let's work through those problems. Let's solve the problem. Let's not complain about it. Let's solve it, because isn't your health and well-being the most important thing here? And shouldn't we be putting that first instead of people's ideological beliefs and ideological purity of where they are with respect to an issue? Shouldn't you come first before them? Before that? I think so. So that's where we stand. We have a number of important issues when we get back. I can't underscore enough the fact that it still is all about jobs. And when the sequester is lifted, which it should be, I was proud to vote against it because I thought it was a wrong-headed thing for the nation to do. And what has it resulted in? So we fought like hell to make sure that we got contracts for United Technologies, the largest manufacturer and employer in the region. We got a 30-year contract for the Joint Strike Fighter, a 40-year contract for the tanker. We won the helicopter. We should be sitting high, wide, and handsome, except sequesters in effect, which says that they have to cut back on costs, and so what they do is shift off the production and the engine making that helps our economy move tremendously. How is that possibly contributing to the national debt, to the jobs? By the way, if we get the unemployment rate, under 6%, that means that we eliminate a third of the deficit. So between driving the inefficiencies in the healthcare system and putting people back to work, we solve this problem. A problem that should have been, we shouldn't have gotten here in the first place. We should have paid for the wars, should have paid for the tax breaks for the wealthy, and should have paid for the Medicare Part D program that ended up being a boondoggle for insurance and pharmaceutical companies. That should have been paid for, it wasn't. And then the bottom falls out in 2008, and we find ourselves in debt. And then Obama tries to claw his way out and bring us back, and all the way he's blocked and obstructed by people who, for the most part, are well-intended. I want to say this about the Tea Party tonight, because I think they oftentimes get maligned too. Here's what I like to say. They're decent people. They're decent people. They care about their country. They really believe, they are true believers, that at the source it was government that was the problem. And it was government spending that was causing all these things. And so anything that's related to it. You all heard the eloquence of Governor Christie when he was wagging his finger at the Tea Party in Washington, saying, wait a minute, nobody can budget for a natural disaster of a hurricane. But they stood up on the floor as their fellow colleagues stood up from New Jersey and New York. Frank Lobiondo, Peter King, Michael Grimm, Rodney Frelinghuysen, all good members of Congress, all from New York and New Jersey, saying, please, we've been hit hard, we need this funding. We're sorry, we feel badly, they would respond, to what's happened, but it wasn't in the budget. It wasn't there. Now, that doesn't make sense rationally. It certainly didn't make sense to Chris Christie, who lashed out immediately. But it makes little sense to anyone. But they were sincere about it. It wasn't as though they were trying to do something in the dark of night or be clandestine. No, this is what they believe. Now, I think it's wrong-headed. But I don't fault people for their beliefs, nor their sincerity. So, I think that people that came to Washington whose goal was to get that we had a big national debt and that needed to be attacked, we've got the way to do it. Irony of all irony, it's the bill that they came to repeal that's going to provide them the opportunity to do that. Because it undercovered and it exposed the underbelly and the inefficiencies that exist in the system, who in driving it out will allow us to drive down the national debt. So let's come together around that. Let's stop the bickering. Let's stop the fighting. And let's do what's in the best interest of the American people, not in the interest of the Tea